This is Gemara in Kesubos, Daf Kof Vav, the final home stretch of this incredible Masechta. And we pick it up from the top of Vav Amid Aleph, 4 lines from the top, a bit more Egadata for today. So says the Gemara, once we're discussing Ravanan Avirogel Yod Asigabei. Ravanan was a custom. Different people have different guests. You know who used to visit Ravanan? Eliyahu Hanavi. Tavi Masli Seid Eliyahu. And he would teach him Seder Eliyahu, and just parenthetically, Pashas is referring to the Brisa referred to as Tanat Eliyahu, which according to many were the Brisas authored by Eliyahu Hanavi, as we see from this story. But others say that there were other authors of that Brisa. But says the Gemara, Kivan David Hachi. But when Ravanan did this, when the previous Gemara that he gave over the entire to Rav Nachman, his Talik, Eliyahu Navi stopped visiting. Yosef and Tainisas Rav Nan sat and fasted. Abai Rachman he davened in Vasa. Eliyahu Navi showed up, but Kiyasa Avim Avislay. Eliyahu Navi finally returns, but he returns looking like a malach, and he scares Ravanan. Havim Avislay Buusa gives him a fright. So what happens? So Ravanan va'avid tevusa. So Ravanan made a box. Yosef Kamei. And he sat inside the box in front of Eliyahu Hanavi because he was so scared. Adabik le sidra, until he taught him the entire Tanadvei Eliyahu, until he finished teaching him. Vainu da'ami, and this is where it comes from. Sid Eliyahu, Rabbi Sid Eliyahu, Zuta. One was prior to Eliyahu Navi's departure, and one was afterwards. Beforehand, he taught him much more. Sid Eliyahu Rabba, and afterwards he taught him less. Sid Eliyahu Zuta. Continues the Gemara, B'shnei Rav Yosef. In the years of Rav Yosef Have Rischa, there was anger, there was a famine. Hashem was clearly angry at them. Amalei Rabbanan Rav Yosef, Rabbanan said to Rav Yosef, Libayimar Achmi, daven for us. Amar Lahos, Rav Yosef says, Umahash Toma Elisha T'chavi Rabbanan Miftri Mikamei Elisha. When the Talmidim would leave him, what does it mean when the Talmidim will leave him? It says the Gemara. Says the Gemara that when the Talmidim would leave him, what would happen? He would have left behind. He would have 2,200 Talmidim left after the Shir. After everyone went home, what would happen? They would have 2,200 Talmidim who would be left behind, that Rav Yosef himself would support them. And yet, I messed up the names. One more time. Elisha would have 2,200 Talmidim left behind. And yet, when there was Rizcha, when there was divine anger, he did not daven. So Rav Yosef says, if Elisha was so great, he didn't daven. I, lowly me, says Rav Yosef, I don't support so many Talmidim. I should daven. So says the Gemara, let's understand what we just said. How do we know that Elisha had 2,200 Talmidim left? The pasuk says that when these breads of Bikurim were donated, he said to his attendant, what should I do with these 22 loaves of bread? What should I do? I should put it in front of 100 people? So says the Gemara, what does he mean, if you tell me that he put 22 breads in front of 100 people, what's the big deal? It's true, it might not be that much food, but in the years of the famine, that would be adequate food. So why was he bemoaning the fact that they didn't have enough food? Ella. It's called Chad v'Chad Kamei Me'ayish. He had so many Talmidim that he had 22 loaves, and he had to put each loaf in front of 100 people, clearly showing that he had 2,200 Talmidim that he supported. Continues, and this was how Rav Yosef showed Elisha was so great, and he said that he did not want to be the one to support. He did not feel it was appropriate for him to daven. Now, so the Gemara tangentially comments, when the Talmidim would leave Rav, there were 1,200 students who were left behind that Rav would personally feed. Mibei Rav, Huna, when they would leave the yeshiva Rav Huna, it would be 800 students, which if we think about this for a moment, this is absolutely astounding. That not only were they giving shir to obviously thousands of Talmidim daily, but they were personally supporting the Paishi Lahu. The Talmidim left behind were those who they were personally feeding. Absolutely incredible. Rav Huna, Havidarsh Betzlis Amarai, continues the Gemara. Rav Huna, when he would darshan, there would be 13 Amarai, there weren't any loudspeakers, but there were 13 spokesmen who would repeat over the shir so that the whole room could hear it. When they would leave the yeshiva of Rav Huna, and they would brush off their clothing. You stand up, you brush off your clothing, there any dust on it. There was so much dust that what would it do? It would cover over the light of the day. And the Shir Rav Huna was in Bavel, and in Eretz Yisrael, all the way in Eretz Yisrael, they would say, "Come to Rav Huna." They just finished the Shir of Rav Huna in Bavel. Absolutely incredible. The numbers, the sheer quantity of Talmidim, and the incredible remarks that we're seeing. The cloud of dust that was created, whether this is figurative or not, is another discussion. Continues the Gemara, when the Rabbanim will leave the yeshiva, Rav Yosef, Avibashi, Arba Meir Rabbanim, there were 400 Rabbanim left over. Karan Navshei Yasmi, and they will call themselves Yisayimim. Kavi Mifti Rabbanim Bei Abayav, Amrila Bei Rav Papav, Amrila Bei Rav Ashi, Habibashi Masan Rabbanim, only 200 Karan Navshei Yasmi, the Yasmi, honing in on the fact that they were in such a lower level than the previous generations. So to continue the Gemara, bringing us back to the Mishnah from yesterday. Yesterday, the Mishnah discussed that the Chatzi Shekel would pay the Dayanim of Gezeiros. So it says, and where was that Chatzi Shekel come from? It came from the Lishkas. The Lishka. So it says the Gemara, other entities that were paid from the Lishka, the temple treasury as well. Oh, my Rav Yitzchak bar Redifa. We're about 20 lines of the wide lines. First word of the line is Redifa. Oh, my Rav Yitzchak bar Redifa, Amar Rav Ami, Mevakei Mumin Shev Yishalayim. Those who would check the animals from Mumin Yishalayim, they would take the schar from the Chumas Alishka. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Talmidei Chacham Amlamdim Melachas Shchita L'Kohanim. Talmidei Chacham that would teach the halachas of Shchita to the Kohanim. I know the schar from Chumas Alishka. Those who would teach the rules of Kemita to the Kohanim know the schar from Chumas Alishka. The scribes that would check over the Sifrei Torah know the schar from Chumas Alishka. Finally, the woman that would weave the different paroichas to the Beis Hamikdash would take the schar of the Chumas of Mishka. But says Rav Nachman, I say no, it didn't come from the Chumas Alishka, Mikodshe Bedik Habayis. That they would come from the Kodshe Bedik Habayis, from the temple treasury. Since the paroichas was a substitute for the building itself, wasn't a mere tapestry doorway as we'll see, but rather was the building itself. Therefore, the payment for creating this structure type current for the building would come from the Bedek Habayis. Meisvei, 4 lines on the wide lines, asked the Gemara and Rav Nachman. Nashim argues Baruchas of Beis Karmu. Amais Lechma upon him. Says the Bryce, the woman that weave the Baruchas. And of course, that's the Nikuda. That's the deed that we're honing in on. But the Bryce continues. Beis Karmu, Amais Lechma upon him, the Beis Karmu for making Lechma upon him. Beis Avtinas, Amais Ketayris. This brings us back to our Yuma days. All the different items of Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Avtinas making the Ketayris. Kulay Nelas Charmit Shumas Halishka. So ask the Gemara, you Rav Nachman just taught us that the woman for reaving the broichas would take their wages from the Bedek Habayis. But we see clearly it's not true. We see clearly the Brisa says they took it from the Chumas Halishka. Answers the Gemara in the first white line, Hasam in the Brisa of the Bavi. The Brisa is referring to the entrances. The Amarav Zira, Amarav, Shashaz, the broichas, Mikdash, with 13 broichases. Shnei B'mikdash Sheni, excuse me. Shiva Keneged Shiva Sharim, the 7 gates. Echel Pischa Shel Echel, one at the entrance of the Echel. Echel the Pischa Shel Ulam. Beis B'Dvira, Beis Keneged Ba'aliyah. So these 13, these were non-structural pareichases, and that's the reason why it is true that the wages for those who made them comes from the Trumas Alishka. Our Braisa that Rav Nachman was talking about were the pareichas that were actually in place of the binyan itself, the building itself, and that's the reason why Rav Nachman said that it would come from the Bedik Abayis and not from the Trumas Alishka. Continues the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom of Kavav Manal Tanar Rabbanan Asham Magalis Beinayam Lepara. Women that would raise their children in absolute purity, so they could one day be the ones to actually, let it work, but deal with the Para Aduma. Hainal Ischar Mitrumas Alishka. Abashal Emer Nashim Vikarish Mishayim Mayazain Son Mavarnis son. Abashal says no, their mothers were not the ones, but rather there would be wealthy women that would feed them and support them for the fact that they would be the ones that raised their children for the Para Aduma. So Ba'i Minei Ravuna Meirav. So continues the Gemara, once we're on the topic of different parts of the Beis Hamikdash, different entities that took the payments on the Trumas Alishka, asks Ravuna, Ba'i Minei Ravuna Meirav. So Ravuna asks from Rav as we turn over to Kavavim Beis, Kli Shares Maushi Asami Kadshe Bedik Habayis. Kli Shares, the different service vessels, the items that were used on the Zbech HaChitzain, where does the cash for them come from? Does it come from the Bedik Habayis, the temple upkeep? Why? What are the two sides of the coin? Do we say do we say that the kelim, that the utensils used on the outside mizbeach are part of the mizbeach and therefore they should come from the Bedik Habayis, the upkeep money? Or do we say no, it's all auxiliary to the carbon, excuse me, and therefore therefore to come from the Trumas Alishka. Amar lei, Rav responds, Ein nasin el mi Trumas Alishka. It comes from the Trumas Alishka that the items used for the Mizbeach have a status of a tzarech carbon, and therefore it comes from the Trumas Alishka. Asks Rav Huna, Eisvei. It says in the Pasuk that when he finished restoring the Beis Hamikdash, they brought the remaining money before Yoyada HaMelech, and he made it into the kelim for the house of Hashem, Klishares v'Goymer. The money that we're discussing over here were monies for the Bedik Habayis, and yet we see that not only is it for the Bedik Habayis, but rather we see that's being used to buy and for the Kli Shares. So you just told me the Kli Shares comes from Trumas Alishka, but we see from this price that Kli Shares comes from Bedik Habayis funds. Amar le, Rav responds that Karayacha Ksuvi. The pasuk you taught is in Ksuvim lo yikracha Neviim. The one who taught you Ksuvim did not teach you Neviim. It's true that the pasuk that you taught, that you just quoted, seemed to say that the Kli Shares comes from the Bedik, comes from the Bedik Habayis, but from Navi, what do we see? Ach lo ya'asa Beis Hashem ksafais, Beis Hashem sipais, excuse me, ki lo ya'asa amlacha yitnuhu. Says the pasuk, they will not be made for Hashem, the instruments or any of the other items. Why? Because they give it to the workmen to repair the Beis Hamikdash. So here, what do we see? We see that the money for the Bedik Habayis was given solely for the Bedik Habayis, and they did not use it for the instruments and the other Kli Shares. So says the Gemara, very good, Rav, you're defending yourself. And you're saying to Rav Huna, Shkoyach, he quoted me a pasuk in Ksuvim, but what about the pasuk in Nach? Says the Gemara, beautiful. Okay, do you have a pasuk in Nach? So now you have a Stiram Sugim. Answers the Gemara, the first pasuk is referring to they collected the money for the Bedik Habayis and they had leftover cash. So the leftover money, it's true, can be used for the Kli Shares. The second pasuk is referring to they collected the cash, they did not have leftover money, and therefore could only be used for the Beis Hamikdash itself. Ask the Gemara, if they collected the cash for the Kli Sharis and it was left over for the Bedek Habayis, what's the difference? Since the money was set aside and donated for Bedek Habayis, the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash, how are you allowed to use it for Kli Sharis? Amar Rav Avua lei Bezdin masna aleihem, says Rav Avua, the heart of Bezdin makes a tanai regarding these monies, that it's only as long as we need it for the upkeep, but if not, it could be used for the Kli Sharis. Tana Devei Rabbi Yishmael, says the Gemara, let's bring a raya to the opinion of Rav. Rav was the one that said that it comes from the Trumas Halishka and not from the Bedek Habayis. That the Kli Sharis, the different utensil used on the Mizbeach, says Rav, comes from the Trumas Halishka, like the Chatzi Shekel in our Mishnah, and now from the Bedek Habayis. So Rabbi Yishmael comes along and he says Kli Sharis bar min Trumas Halishka, explicit proof. Shenamar Shar Kesef Ezeu Kesef Yishal Shirayim. What does it mean that there's Kesef that has leftovers? Aviyomer Zeh Trumas Halishka. Shirayim Gufayu says Mar, but wait, maybe it's the remainders themselves, not the cash. Kedamarava Oila Oila Rishayna Hachanami Kesef Kesef Rishayn. That when it says that Kesef, it means the first money is withdrawn and not necessarily the remainder. So that's the Machlokes Rav and Rav Huna, and the Gemara brings a raya to Rav. We continue 20 lines down. The first one line is HaKesef. The Rav was just taught us, so we just proved the Rav that the Kli Sharis comes in the Trumas Halishka. Says, asks the Gemara Meisvei, HaKetayres Chol Karbanos Tibra Bar Min Trumas Halishka. The Ketayres, all the Karbanos, they come from the Trumas Halishka. Mizbeach Hazav Ulavaynu Kli Sharis comes from the excess of the Nechasim, clearly not from the Trumas Halishka, like you Rav just taught. This is that which they learned. So we have an explicit brisa. Teaching us not like Rav. So answers the Gemara, you're right. Tanoi, it is indeed a machlekes Tanoim. Where do the Kli Sharis come from? The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Meiser Truma Ma Yoisin Ba. What do they do with the excess of the Truma? Rikuyi Zav Sipur LeBeis Kacha Ektashin. Says the first opinion, they would use the excess of the Machzah shekels and they would make gold sheets for the covering of the Kacha Ektashin. Rabbi Yishmael Aimer, the excess of the peiros would be used for the dessert to keep and make sure there was always karbanos burning on the mizbeach all night. Ma'aser Truma was what? The Kli Sharis was used for the Kli Sharis, says Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Kiva Aimer, says Rabbi Kiva, about 15-20 lines at the bottom. The first one is Ma'aser Truma l'kitzam mizbeach, and Ma'aser Nachas l'Kli Sharis. Chavnin is kana Ma'aser Nachas l'kitzam mizbeach, Ma'aser Truma l'Kli Sharis. Ve'zeh lo yamaydim peiros. And he concludes the brisa, Rabbi Kiva and Rachalina Sagana Kahanim do not agree with regarding to peiros. So what is this peiros? Peiros may have it when this brisa, 4 different opinions as to what we do. What did it mean when it said peiros? The Tanya is learned in a brisa. Ma'aser Truma Maya Oisin Ba. What would they do with the excess of the Truma of the Machzah shekels? Loich and peiros bezol, they buy fruit for cheap, and they sell for expensive. And the money they would make, they would use that for the dessert to make sure that there always would be something burning on the mizbeach. This is what we learn. That's what it means. What does it mean, the excess of the peiros? It means that they would buy it for cheap and sell it for more money, therefore be able to support and have karbanos burning on the mizbeach all night. What does it mean that neither would admit with the Rav Chlinis Kana Kohanim Rav Kiva did not agree with regard to peiros? The Tanan, what would they do with the excess of the Shiari Alishka of the temple treasury? Says Rav Yishmael, you know what they would do? They would use it to buy wine and oil and flour and then sell it, and the profit and the excess would go to the Hektish. Whereas Rav Kiva Aimer says, Rav Kiva, we don't make money with Hektish. We don't utilize the money of the Beis HaMikdash for investments, nor money for the Aniyim. So B'shal Hektish, my time alloy, where did Rav Kiva get this? That we don't use the money of Hektish for such a purpose, because there's no concept of utilizing the money in the Beis Hamikdash to make money on it. Why don't we make money from the Aniyim's money? Because maybe he might come to find a poor person, there'll be nothing available to give him, so you're never allowed to take the money and invest it, as you always have to have the money readily available. I will pick up from the end of this Amud the next year. Amir Tzah Hashem.